There is a very special virtue needed in the world today. Some think it might be love, others perhaps peace, truthfulness, honesty, integrity, stability, resilience. One could argue for any of these qualities, and they are all needed in the world today. But the mother of all virtues is purity. Where the soul is stable in its highest stage of personal value. The intrinsic nature and worth of the soul is completely emerged. This automatically liberates me from taking support in any form from false types of value, external validation, what we might call ego. With ego, there is insecurity, reactivity, sensitivity. Truly a state of spiritual immaturity. All the soul is seeking is that personal value, which ego can never provide. Letting go, stabilizing in my eternal, innate state, will emerge my true value. No longer needing to take support from ego. I do not have to fight against ego, but embrace a very pure experience of my intrinsic value as a soul. Om Shanti.
Shanti, and welcome to Interview with a Raj Yogi. And tonight we are continuing with last week's topic, Purity Disarms Ego. So we had briefly mentioned that originally we wanted to have it called Truth Disarms Ego, but this aspect of purity just seemed to be very meaningful. And so last week we were mentioning about just something as a little child, what that can do for an adult. Google Chrome is down. And sorry, the effect when there is that example of that purity of a child, it can very much neutralize, what someone is feeling in their presence. So I found even the meditation commentary was actually very powerful, and I think we don't need to have a session. I think it answered all the questions. This aspect of purity, why we wanted to have a second session, because it seems like in every different circumstance, some particular quality is needed. And that's why it's quite interesting. It was shared in the commentary, but what is needed at that time that can fulfill, that can neutralize, that can melt, it can disarm. And so you had mentioned about that it's this real state of the self. Like, how does that work? Because we're quite intellectual these days in terms of just how we operate in our interactions, thinking what am I supposed to say? And sometimes in certain employments, you're trained to have certain scripts. Seems quite laborious, but so that was really the biggest thing that really stayed with me after our session last week. It's just purity seems to fulfill no matter what. How does that work?
Shanti, I apologize for the noisiness here. So, there was something that I noticed with dance, and there's been attempts to replicate it in athletics. I noticed with dancers, ballet was often referred to as a very pure form of movement. Dancers actually use the word pure. And that you could take someone who's had ballet training and they can do all sorts of different movements. It was really odd. They could do gymnastics or anything really. There was something about getting what we call the basics of movement literacy, which happens in ballet, that then can cross over and be used in different applications. And then we saw the same trend in sports and athletics that this discipline emerged called CrossFit. What it's become is different, but the idea is that could someone just train in the very foundation, very pure form of movement, and then be able to use it in a variety of different settings. So they can do gymnastics, or they can do track and field, or they can swim or horseback ride because they have the basics. So it's the same sort of principle spiritually, that if I can get the very foundation of how to live, this purity, then it can be applicable or relevant. That state is relevant in any kind of situation. The right thing will emerge because I have the foundation. The concept being that the highest quality of life is based on a foundation of truth. So where there's truth, there will always be a relevant response or purity.
So perhaps it would liberate all of us when we keep thinking that we have to think our way through situations?
Well, we definitely live in a world which focuses on specializing. So, even specializing within the specialty, I can't believe the different professions that exist now and the different roles souls are playing professionally. So specialized. But I don't think that's how it started. I think that actually one somehow received a training that allowed them to be what we call sensible in different situations. I know that I have found myself definitely in situations that are not within my scope of expertise at all. I don't have much expertise in anything. So definitely that applies to most situations I find myself in. So it might be, I don't know, different professions or different settings. But if I go into a state of silence or a very pure state, somehow something emerges that's relevant. It always fascinates me. And I can't say it's anything to do with a physical skill set because there isn't anything, but there's something about being that detached, that free, that unlocks the sense of the soul so that we can do what is relevant and appropriate.
So, if you could describe what purity is or what it feels like, does it just depend on the context? Is it fullness? Is it pure intention? Perhaps maybe we can really only use physical examples to a certain degree. Um, when you're talking about ballet, there's, I don't know what it is, like even CrossFit, even though I assume, so I don't know, you have to correct me, they focus on strong core. I don't know. But there seems to be something that you were mentioning about ballet that enables one to be able to adapt in all these different situations. What is the nature of purity that allows, helping us just to understand more of how that works? Because, to trust just being in that state, I can see, ironically, it's ego that gets in the way to try to figure things out.
I suspect the reason ballet, and some might definitely disagree with me, but I suspect the reason it's referred to as a very pure form of movement is because it focuses on the deep, the essence, the alignment of movement, which is relevant across all different disciplines. So that's what's happening spiritually as well. When we say pure, pure technically just means nothing foreign mixed in. So if I was talking about myself, pure means that there's nothing that is not intrinsic to me there. And the suggestion being that things like ego, anger, greed are not intrinsic to the human soul. So pure would be I'm free of those kinds of forces. The method we use to arrive at that state is to immerse ourselves in truth. Just like someone who's had amnesia, you're constantly reminding them about the truth and having them try to experience that. And somehow the forgetfulness wears off. So, the same concept here, really spending a lot of time immersed in the truth, such that what is not me just melts away. And when I'm in that state of truth, it's such, whatever is pure is considered very valuable. If I was to get anything that had, this is why pure is put on labels, is to try to support increasing the price of it if they can have that granted. So anything pure is considered more valuable. So when I'm in a pure state, I'm in my most valuable state. We're always valuable, of course, but we don't experience ourselves as valuable. So we begin to seek the value outside. The minute I do that, which we call ego, I start to lose sense. I start to become blind. I'm so desperate to do whatever it takes to get that value that, yes, my intentions are no longer pure. My vision's no longer like the way I think is no longer pure. I'm so out of alignment, if you will, that pure state. So it really distorts our sense. I can be very clever. I can be very well educated or trained. I can be all of these things, but I still may not be sensible. So it's really distorting. It's blinding, actually, when we're not in that alignment.
Now, this might seem like a strange question, or maybe it's sort of self explanatory, but this aspect of how fulfilling purity is given whatever situation is obviously only relevant when things are not pure. So if we were all pure, everyone was all happy, and there clearly, well, I'm not sure souls would agree, there wouldn't even be a language that would be negative or polarity in that sense. So is it just because we are empty, we're everything but any good word you can say, not meaning to be self-deprecating, but just we're so far from ourselves that it's the impact of that vibration that will just fill all the holes that are needed.
Yeah, always this feeling that if we could taste what it feels like to be in that pure state, we'd realize that that's really the one thing we need to pursue, and then there'd be complete satisfaction, contentment in life. It's very exhausting the way we're going about it right now, which is trying to get value of self out there. It's exhausting and extremely um, unstable because everything out there is temporary. So whenever I anchor my sense of self value on something temporary, then it's quite fragile. So it's really exhausting to maintain this approach to personal value. When we are in a state of personal value, it is completely fulfilling. When we're in a pure state, we're completely fulfilled or deeply content. The word often used is bliss, blissful. So much of our activity then is no longer necessary. I'd say 99.9% of our activity during the day is motivated by trying to attain value. We go and dedicate hours to our work. I don't know how much we need to live on, but it seems that we are wanting a lot. We look for validation in the eyes of others. There's things like competition and jealousy. I mean, it's just so much activity is inspired by simply being empty, and we say spiritually impoverished, empty of personal value, which purity will give.
So it's I was just thinking about the very substance of who we are. It may not make sense to say that the very substance of we are is that we're souls. So it sort of begs the question of what is fulfilling, that even when you were saying that someone could have lots of skills, could, speak very well, like eloquent or whatever the case, it's not fulfilling me, the soul, if that's what it is. Is it a vibration? Is it truth? Or is it both? Because when you were talking about ballet, that there's this purity of movement that has so much to do with alignment. So for for someone who is returning back to that purity, is it enough just to be around someone who, well, actually the Supreme Soul, who has just that pure vibration? Or is it deeper than that too, as you were talking about the alignment of ballet? But at the end, it's the purity of my awareness that enables me to have a certain kind of state of being, a certain type of vibration. Or both.
It's going to be challenging to connect in a meaningful way with the Supreme Soul unless I'm in alignment. So, in other words, my relationship with God is so dependent on the relationship I have with myself. And that's, forget about God, that's with everyone. The relationship I have with anyone is so colored by the relationship I have with myself. So this is going to continue with God now. So to be in that good alignment, to be able to have a true connection, a meaningful connection with that being. In other words, I need to appreciate I'm a soul to be able to connect to a spiritual being. It's going to be very difficult, if not impossible. I will pull that soul down. I'll make him into something else to try to connect. So that goes without saying. I was thinking as you were sharing, I was thinking about what's very, I guess, the bottom line, what's very meaningful for us. Um, a pure soul, the way they operate through the body is summarized in one word, they're benevolent. So that is the most meaningful thing for us, is to be benevolent. So I was thinking about a particular ballet studio that's very, very, very elite quality of dancers that it produces. And I've noticed something about this studio. You know, the dancers are just amazing, very, very skilled. But somewhere along the line, I'm not sure how it happened or if it happened just organically, but the culture at this ballet studio is so supportive. Like the students are so supportive of each other, so respectful. It's quite rare. It's usually very competitive. Maybe that's still happening. I don't know. But what's revealed to me is there's a very kind culture. Um, and that's far more important than the skill set. In fact, it gets more out of the dancers having that culture. So this kindness, this benevolence will always trump any other skill set. To be skilled in being kind is a pure heart, and it's extremely fulfilling. It's a clean heart. We really like ourselves when we are pure or kind in how we interact. So that is the most fulfilling thing. So we have many very skilled people on this planet, but are they kind? And it's not that they're not able to be kind. Every human soul is able to be kind, but am I honoring my true nature?
So I know that your background with ballet, I was thinking about things that I remember learning from school, which was more scientific, but I was thinking about, the properties of something that's solid versus something like water versus something like gas or vapor. And that gas or vapor it reminds me so much about spiritually being light. Uh, Gas or vapor can really just flex in all situations, be in the smallest spaces. Something solid, so rigid, can't really do much of anything. But spiritually speaking, I feel like it's the same thing. That I don't know. Every time I think of purity, I'm thinking about something that's so wholesome, so healing. It's can just I don't know, just emerge as a capacity in all sorts of situations without even thinking. Um, how about the Supreme Soul? Because he's always in this state of truth, so he's not having to, but he's also in that state that's pure. So, how does that work in terms of, we use the example of the little baby, but let's just use the example of a lot of the senior students, that souls come in front of them, or even when we are, if we're in that alignment properly, souls come in front of, they're not in that alignment. So, how does that work then? Like, is it because the Supreme Soul is incorporeal that it requires us to be in that alignment? Or is it because there's more than just being colored by that vibration? I also have to transform my sense of self if I want to be able to sustain that vibration.
I may not have quite understood the question you're asking. How does which part work? That the seniors or
When you were sharing that that connection to Supreme Soul requires I need to be in a certain alignment to benefit. But when we're around the senior students or when others who are not in the study, they're around us, they're experiencing that benefit without actually being in that alignment.
I would argue that if it's genuine, if we're really in the alignment, um, for that brief moment, they are coming into alignment. There is, we've talked about it before, there's a discipline called mitzvah. And the premise, I believe, I mean, I've only had one treatment long ago, but it kind of fascinated me, is that the practitioner is aligned and they make contact with you and they transfer the alignment. You feel yourself coming into alignment. It's very subtle, by virtue of the power that they're in a powerful alignment. They're stable. And this is what we hear in this study, that if one is genuinely aligned and connected to the source of that pure source, so that's really helping to sustain their own alignment for the moment that they're in connection. They will align. The soul will come into alignment. But because they did not create it themselves, when they go out of that connection, the alignment may no longer be there. But they at least have tasted it and might be intrigued to want to know more.
Well, I feel like we're at a cliffhanger. We're running out of time. That one's alignment can really make someone else aligned. Perhaps for another session, you'd have a little reflection.
The more subtle, simple, silent, essenceful a state is, the more powerful it actually is, and the greater impact it can have. As I sit here now, to the best of my ability, I go inside and move into a subtle, essenceful, simple, silent state. Just me, the soul, situated behind the forehead. Very calm, very peaceful in my true nature, very content. I myself experience the benefits of this moment, but I am also creating a vibration, subtle. Words will only reach those directly in contact with me, but this vibration can go anywhere, touch souls near or far. When I come into alignment myself, that spiritual experience of self, I receive the benefits, but it definitely, automatically, very naturally, without any arrogance, serves others as well. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you for joining with us this evening. Thank you, Judy. No particular new updates, just to encourage souls to check our center website, calgary.brahmakumaris.ca, for online sessions as well as drop in sessions. So, one little slight change is at the Academy. And so, we'll actually be offering the session that is existing at the Academy once a month. And the topic is changing to like a meditation workshop. Learn about meditation. So this would be like an hour and a half session, an hour 15-minute session at the Academy. At this point in time, I think it's once a month, but it's not like there is a pattern. So in a way, it's a bit of a moving target. So the next session is on February 24th. So that's basically effective now. So we will be updating the website. So please check the website. And for those who are on email, we'll be sending that out as well too. So, and I believe registration is required. Just trying to encourage souls to check out the information. We'll have that on Eventbrite as well. Thank you for joining with us. Om Shanti.